I, F29, don't know how to handle a matchmade relationship with a man, 49M, 2 decades older than me. Is his philosophy something I should seriously consider? Hello, Reddit. This is quite a situation, and I genuinely need some advice. I am a 29-year-old female, and I was introduced to a 49-year-old man through a kind of practical Asian-style arrangement, not a romantic story, but something aimed at a long-term partnership, companionship, and possibly children in the future. Ultimately, the decision is ours, but there was a goal established from the beginning. We agreed to continue our communication and see where this leads, even though he resides abroad. He appeared very enthusiastic and mentioned that I exceeded his expectations in terms of appearance and other aspects. Currently, we maintain contact via a messaging application. I provided him with a clear schedule indicating when I could respond to messages and take calls, and he said he was fine with that. Spoiler, he was not. He traveled specifically for the matchmaking event and left the very next day. We spent about 6 hours together over 2 days. There was a small spark on my part, but for me, it leaned more toward practicality than romance. He is not unattractive per se. He is clean-cut, but honestly, he is somewhat average. No chin. Apologies. I am all right, I clean up well, not a beauty queen by any means. Therefore, this was a practical choice. I agreed to be a loyal wife, willing to work if necessary, as long as we liked each other enough to progress toward marriage. For some context, until recently, perhaps 3 years ago, I was not considered conventionally attractive. I lost a significant amount of weight, learned how to apply makeup and use hair products, and only now feel presentable. I have never had a boyfriend, not even a situationship. He has a past, including children and a few unsuccessful relationships. That is not the issue, and I do not perceive his children as baggage in any way. On the other hand, my mother is desperate for me to get married. She is pleased for me to be with any man who meets her criteria. I do want to marry, but on my terms. She believes I should accept any decent proposal. She even once said, "Did anyone even want to date you?" As though that invalidates my standards. Despite all this, I was honest with him. I am introverted, new to relationships, slow to develop feelings, and have trust issues partly due to family dynamics, but also because of who I am. I informed him that I am not naturally affectionate or clingy, and that I desire a stable, thoughtful relationship based on mutual respect, rather than love bombing and fantasy. He claimed to understand. However, a few weeks in, things began to change. He wanted me to be more expressive, call more often, and be more spontaneous. He repeatedly stated, "I believe this is important," and insisted that scheduling calls once a week was not natural, it should come from the heart. I will admit, I have not been the most affectionate girlfriend, even through messaging. However, it has only been 3 months, and he has spent 97 of those days on another continent. Yes, I do possess my own delusions and high standards when it comes to love. I recognize that I am not a beauty queen, but I am also aware of what I contribute to a relationship. I make an effort. I message him every day and attempt to schedule calls, yet he remains unsatisfied. He claims that a relationship should not require so much work, asserting that scheduling calls is unnatural, but spontaneous and loving messages should occur naturally. He believes I simply need to exert more effort, and what is wrong, after all, with affectionate messages? According to him, a couple should be sweet, despite my discomfort with that type of conversation. Around the same time, he expressed a desire to tell others that I was his girlfriend. I agreed and clarified that he should say we were simply introduced. Fair enough, introductions like ours are not casual anyway. Then he decided to visit again, claiming that our relationship would not endure until June without another meeting. Those 5 days were unbearable. He sought the full experience of a loving girlfriend, perhaps even an enthusiastic hug at the airport. I could not provide that. I reminded him that I develop feelings slowly, but he kept insisting. "Trust me," he said. "Rely on me." It felt like emotional pressure. After that, he returned abroad, and it has now been 3 months since we first met. He has been seeking reassurance, wanting to hear, "I miss you," and "I love you," so he can feel confident in proposing this summer. However, I have not said those words because I do not feel them. I want to be fair. I genuinely believe he desires a loving relationship, and there is nothing wrong with that. It is not inappropriate to want warmth, affection, and emotional connection from your partner. I understand that he is simply searching for someone who meets him at that level. However, I do not believe I am that person, and that mismatch is beginning to feel glaringly obvious. It is not wrong to desire love, but it is problematic to expect it from someone who has already indicated she is emotionally slow and cautious, and then to treat her coldly when she does not deliver rapidly enough. Meanwhile, he is constantly seeking validation and reassurance. He talks at me, my goodness, the man can talk for hours about high school and college, rather than with me. When I attempt to discuss practical matters, future plans, expectations, roles in marriage, he either misconstrues my comments or focuses on the wrong aspects. For instance, I once stated that we should have a mutual understanding of roles, responsibilities, and expectations, and he fixated on the word agreement, as if I were attempting to take his money. On another occasion, I mentioned that if we moved to Canada, I would eventually like to bring my mother over. He interpreted that to mean I was only interested in him for immigration purposes. These reactions do not seem like innocent misunderstandings, they feel like projections of his own fears or worse, his family's insecurities. I cannot help but feel insulted. He continues to act as though I am a gold digger, even though he is not wealthy by his own standards. His family is affluent, they own properties, but none of that would go to me. Perhaps our children, if we even progress that far. His family apparently desires a prenuptial agreement. Then he changed his story and stated that his brother does not care if he gets one, but he, the man, now wants one due to my temper, and he fears I will leave him like his ex did. Things have taken an even stranger turn. He has begun discussing traditional values, claiming a man's word should carry more weight because he is a man. He asserts that this is not merely a preference, but common sense. He believes that women having an equal voice leads to arguments, and that a hierarchy brings order. He always adds disclaimers that the woman should still have a say, but ultimately, he wants the man's decision to take precedence. When I questioned, "What if the woman works and the man does not?" he replied that the man's word should still outweigh hers. I am not opposed to being a more supportive or submissive partner if the man is genuinely capable and deserving of respect, but this sounds like control disguised as eloquence. He compared his worldview to systems such as slavery, stating that slavery was a worldview that did not survive, whereas his should. I was unsure whether to laugh or cringe. He continuously mentioned, "I have spoken to other people, Canadians, Asians, and they agree with me," as if that makes it objective truth. When I pointed out that systems can be exploited, he responded, "If people are abused by the system, they are simply foolish," as if the system is flawless and only the individuals are flawed. He claims that giving the man more authority reduces conflicts. It is not about ego, but rather about order. He wants me to remain quiet and subdued at times, and yes, he claims he will too. But he also stated he will not be spoken down to by a 29-year-old. He believes that my slightly raising my voice during a call constituted bullying. He even told my mother that he is afraid to converse directly with me due to my temperament, and now she is siding with him. She says I should be more demure, more feminine, more agreeable. She is aligning with him, telling me I am wrong, that I should not have argued, and that I should simply marry him, keep my head down, focus on my career and the family. I am unsure whether to laugh or cry. It feels as though I am treating them as adversaries due to my belief that their reasoning is flawed. I should have remained silent and redirected our conversation to more pleasant subjects. They are both reprimanding me about my demeanor. Would I even be in conflict with him if he had not raised these topics in the first place? If he had not uttered the words, "A man's word should carry more weight." Additionally, he continually references his ex-wife, how she cheated and now wants to return, phrasing it along the lines of, "Why would she be begging to come back to me if I was so terrible?" Their children said to their mother, "Isn't this what you wanted? Did you not leave Dad for this man?" What? As though it is some cautionary tale I am meant to absorb. Honestly, I believe I could be the ideal submissive, loving partner if I had someone I genuinely respected and who earned that dynamic. If the man were genuinely perfect and could support us without requiring me to work. However, even then, I believe that marriage should be a partnership where both parties have a voice, a partnership. Yes, even if it leads to disagreements, couples communicate because they love each other. I think even conservative men at least attempt to embody those values, most of them. I hope. I do not want to delve into politics, but surely even traditional couples believe that both partners should have a say. I do not think it is wrong to make concessions or compromises, but he seems terrified that I might not simply acquiesce in every disagreement, so he is planting seeds now to ensure that I do. Sai, I would appreciate hearing your thoughts. Story 2. Living with my partner has become unbearable. After 2.5 years together, his complaints, constant name-calling, and aggressive behavior have left me feeling trapped and frightened. Is he a narcissist, or just wanting to control everything? What should I do next? I apologize, this will be a lengthy post. I have been with my partner for 2.5 years. Ever since we moved in together, he completely switched and became a harsh individual. My partner is a male, 35 years old, and I am a female, 37 years old. I have tried to be understanding regarding certain issues, such as his intolerance to heat, his recent dislike towards his job, and everyday stresses. However, none of these factors justify his constant need to take his frustrations out on me. I am unable to defend myself or interject during arguments because he is simply mean about whatever topic he wants to dispute. He often goes on for what feels like 20 minutes straight about the subject of his grievances. We do not spend much time together due to different days off and varying work hours. Whenever we shop together, he spends the entire time complaining about the price of every single item I wish to purchase. At times, I feel as though I am not allowed to buy something if there is a less expensive item nearby. I have wanted to purchase books, but he has remarked on why I need to spend money so frequently, asking why I always want to buy something. I eventually place my items back on the shelf because he incessantly complains, then turns around and tells me not to undervalue myself, saying that if I want something, I should just go ahead and get it. He gripes about my cooking, always insisting that we eat the same dishes. I have to select different meats every night and limit fish to once a week because it sits better with my stomach than meat does. I am always the one cooking due to differing work schedules, as he often does not finish until 7:30 at night. I may choose chicken one night, steak the next, and yet he still complains that I prepare the same meals. He has voiced his dissatisfaction because I shower before he gets home, and then he complains when I do not shower right after we have sex. He never initiates intimacy quickly after sex, yet now appears to expect me to do so, even though he previously had no issue with me not doing it. I always shower. I just prefer to wait a bit afterward, and I do not understand why it has suddenly become a problem for him. I realize he has been cheated on by most of his previous girlfriends, but I feel I cannot share jokes from my workplace or mention conversations I have with my male coworkers, while he freely discusses his female coworkers, which does not bother me since I understand he works with more women than men. When I attempt to defend myself against his name-calling and verbal abuse, he retaliates with phrases such as "go away," "you cannot," or "leave me alone, you are annoying." If I say anything, he often responds with, "That's right, I am always wrong, and you are always right," frequently claiming that I am merely playing the victim because I want him to stop using hurtful names and highlighting that his behavior is unacceptable. He persistently makes derogatory comments about women, expressing phrases like, "There are too many of you women," and "you women always get away with everything and expect everything to be handed to you." He makes some variation of such comments every single day. His ex-girlfriend accused him of rape and assault simply because he did not want to continue their relationship. Therefore, I understand why he harbors some anger issues toward women. He has never attempted to assault or abuse me in any manner, which is tragic considering there are individuals like that. The same situation reportedly occurred to one of his friends years ago, based on what he has shared. His ex-girlfriend and her mother have also made similar accusations against past partners. I used to feel excitement when he would call or come home, but now I dread it. I feel trapped in my own home and find myself walking on eggshells whenever he is around. He was never this cruel, never resorted to name-calling, and never made me feel this way. He has locked me out of our house, towered over me in an attempt to intimidate me, kicked my foot, and raised his fist as if to strike me. He has pushed me and held me down on the bed before. It feels like I am waiting for him to hit me at some point. If I leave anything lying around, he explodes with anger, yet he leaves empty meat packages in the sink for 3 days. If I comment on it, he accuses me of being the victim or simply dismisses me with harsh words. I have asked him to put his clothes away, but he has not done so. Again, if I mention it, I am met with similar vulgarities. He places items on top of the bin instead of in it, and then insists that everything I throw away must go in the outdoor bin. He rarely does the dishes, promising to do them, yet 3 days later they remain undone. Once more, if I bring this up, I am met with rude responses. I consistently end up doing the dishes before dinner nearly every night because he will not. On the rare occasions he does help, he spends the entire time complaining. He has complained when I forget to remove the laundry from the washing machine, but he has done the same thing himself. If I mention this, he tells me to stop playing the victim and responds with his signature phrase. He typically does not start work until noon most days and claims to wake up at 7:30 a.m. However, he refuses to do the dishes, clean anything, or put his clothes away, all while expressing complaints when I leave anything out. He simply sits on his video game console or phone until it is time to go to work, then grumbles when he returns home. There have been times when he walks through the front door from work and immediately begins to verbally attack me over something I did not do, forgot to do, or did not have time for because I was occupied with other tasks. He continuously asks, in the most unpleasant tone imaginable, if I can stop doing certain things or forgetting specific items. However, whenever I try to discuss anything with him, he refuses to listen and ultimately blames me for everything. If I order food online because I am genuinely too fatigued to drive to the store, he complains about it. He criticizes that I never buy things for him, yet every time I inquire about what he wants, he either says nothing or don't worry about it. Whenever he cooks, it is always pasta and ground meat, yet I cannot prepare the same meat 2 days in a row without him complaining that I am repeating meals. If I wish to change anything around the house or purchase something new, he always complains about the cost and financial issues, but insists he knows how to complete repairs without making any effort to fix anything. Our toilet has a leak, and I want a new one. He complains about replacing it and insists he can fix it, but has not taken any action to do so. Once again, if I mention this, I am criticized and subjected to verbal abuse. I am completely fed up. This situation has become unbearable. It has reached a point where I no longer want to be with him because I cannot endure his relentless name-calling and verbal abuse any longer. I feel more afraid if that makes any sense about breaking up with him because I do not know how he will react. Is he a narcissist, or is he merely attempting to control everything? I have never had a partner like him before. Story 3. My boyfriend, 27M, keeps choosing his best friend's girlfriend, 22F, over me. How do I handle it? Update at the bottom. I never thought I would actually write this out, but I am extremely frustrated, and I have enough self-awareness to recognize that I do not make the best judgment calls when I am this angry. I will try to keep this brief and clear. My boyfriend and I have been together for 1 year, and this is truly our first issue. Last week, my boyfriend, 27 years old, and I, 25 years old, had plans to go out with his best friend, Jack, 27 years old, and his new girlfriend, Myrtle, 22 years old. They have been dating for roughly 2 months. The plan was to go to my favorite club. It is expensive, so we do not go there often, maybe once every 3 months. I was really excited. I had chosen my attractive outfit and had hyped myself up all week to wear it with confidence and dance with my boyfriend. I was thrilled. On Friday, last week, the day we were supposed to go out, my boyfriend informed me that we were no longer going because Myrtle decided she did not want to go that night. She wanted to wait until her friend could join, which is next week, today, and the plan was changed to meet Jack and Myrtle at the local bar we go to every single Friday. I was disappointed, and I told my boyfriend that I would not be able to go out next week, today, because I would be on my period. I have very painful periods, and I would feel miserable. I received a half-hearted, "I will make it up to you. Let's just go to the local bar tonight." I was upset, but I agreed, and I chose a less revealing outfit that was still too nice for the local bar. I wanted to dress up and feel good about myself. As we were about to leave, I stepped out of the bathroom wearing a bodycon dress with cut-out sides and a red lip. I was ready to have a great night out when my boyfriend looked at me and said, "We aren't going out tonight." When I asked why, He explained that Myrtle decided she wanted to go home, so she and Jack were leaving. At that moment, I lost my cool and yelled at him that I was going out, and he could either find a place and come with me, or I would find a place and go alone. He chose another bar I like, and we went there together. I had fun, but you could sense that there was a bad vibe lingering the entire time. A few days passed, and I was still upset about how everything went down. However, my boyfriend and I talked about it. I expressed that it felt like he chose them over me. I was not included in the conversation, and now I have to wait another 3 months to visit my favorite place because I cannot go when I am menstruating. He apologized and said he did not want to go anyway. I felt we had a really good heart-to-heart conversation, and I thought it was resolved. Fast forward to tonight. I received a text from my boyfriend about 2 hours ago, stating that he was going out tonight with Jack, Myrtle, and Myrtle's best friend, the person this whole situation was rescheduled for. My boyfriend said Jack played the friend card, and he had to go and wanted to see his friend. Now, the reason I am angry and the reason I need advice. This is not the first time Myrtle has done something like this. She is always canceling at the last minute and taking Jack with her. The most recent incident was a guy's trip that she weaseled her way into, and she was the only girl among 6 guys. According to my boyfriend, she kept Jack all to herself the entire time. I am furious that they are all going to what everyone knows is my favorite spot without me. I am angry that he will potentially be coupled up with the only single girl in the group. I have expressed all of this to him, and he still chose to inform me that he was going. I feel hurt because I believe that regardless of what he said to my face, he did not truly hear me. I am upset that I cannot visit my favorite spot now. I feel like I am the only one affected. I recognize that it is just a club, and it should not be such a significant issue, but my fear is that this is setting a precedent for how bigger future matters will be handled. Eventually, it will be me barefoot and pregnant, sitting alone at home while they all enjoy themselves. I feel like Myrtle is controlling everything, and no matter how I rationalize this in my mind, I feel like I appear to be an unhinged jerk. I considered showing up at the club alone, looking stunning, but I still have period pain to manage. I thought about going out to the dumpling restaurant we are all supposed to visit tomorrow, and then telling all of them that I already went and we do not need to go. But they would probably go without me anyway. I even thought about going to a friend's house, and when my boyfriend arrives at my place after the club, I could say, "Yeah, I'm not home, I went out." But he might not even bother coming to my place and wouldn't even know. Can anyone provide advice on how to handle this situation? Update: thank you to everyone who responded. The most common response was to end the relationship. But that was the obvious and straightforward thing to do, and I truly want to resolve this. I love my boyfriend, and working through this is essential to me. I have dated some very toxic individuals in the past, and my boyfriend does not behave like them at all. In every other situation, I am his first choice, and he makes me feel confident and loved. I feel secure in my relationship, and I honestly was not concerned about him cheating. However, this entire situation became so emotionally overwhelming for me that I turned to this forum. Someone suggested I might have premenstrual dysphoric disorder. After researching it, I am fairly certain that is my issue. I match all the symptoms, including the mood swings, which I know are more severe during this time. I mentioned that in the opening line of my post. It is comforting to have a label for it, so thank you for providing an answer that countless doctors have failed to give me throughout my life. Many people mentioned that Myrtle was not my issue, and one commenter noted that she seems more self-centered than malicious, which I agree with. I just know that she annoys me, and I have a biased opinion about her. One person suggested texting my boyfriend to say I was feeling better and wanted to go out to the club now to gauge his reaction. Because of my extreme pain, I could not risk him saying, "Yeah, come out." Instead, I texted him around 6 p.m., saying that I wasn't feeling well and needed him to come over. His response was, "Okay, my love, I'm coming over." He arrived with several of my favorite chocolate bars and helped me prepare dinner. We cuddled on the couch with my dog while watching my favorite anime. He did not seem upset at all about missing the trip to the club. He did mention he was sorry about the friend card, but Jack didn't want to be alone in Myrtle's group of friends. I feel that Jack needs to sort out his own relationship, as many of you pointed out. I told my boyfriend he could hang out with Jack tonight when we all go out for dumplings, and I will be nice to Myrtle as I usually am. However, after this post, not accidentally calling her Myrtle to her face might be somewhat challenging. This isn't the dramatic blow-up I am sure you all wanted, but if something eventful occurs at the dumpling restaurant, I will let you know. Thank you once again for so many prompt responses during my moment of panic. Story 4. After a chaotic breakup fueled by medication and a manic episode, I lost Daniel, the one I loved since I was 15. Years later, despite the turmoil, thoughts of him consume me. Can you truly move on when your heart never forgets? I had been in love with Daniel since I was 15 years old, but the opportunity to date did not arise until I was 19, and I felt the need to be loyal to an abusive man with whom I had been in a tumultuous relationship. We were together for 5 years when a friend passed away unexpectedly, and it felt as if my entire life shattered. The friend and I were not particularly close, but for some reason, I found myself in a pit of despair that I could not escape. I began experiencing nightmares about my previous relationship or fears of losing more of my loved ones. Meanwhile, I felt an immense pressure to become pregnant, even though I believed it would be impossible at that time. I struggled to go more than a day without crying. I decided to consult a doctor about my options, and Daniel assured me that he would support me. He accompanied me, and I shared everything I was feeling with the doctor. The doctor prescribed a generic version of Paxil and mentioned that it would take about a month for the medication to take effect. The side effects were almost immediate. It felt as though bugs were crawling incessantly on my skin. I experienced hot flashes, while my unending sadness transformed into an overwhelming sexual energy that pulsed ceaselessly. I felt courageous and began to feel like I had complete control over everything. Initially, the excessive sexual energy was enjoyable, but it soon felt inappropriate. I started requesting that Daniel be harsher with me in the bedroom, almost to the point of asking him to simulate violating me, which he, of course, refused. I proposed opening our relationship and pressured Daniel into agreement. I began seeking out individuals specifically interested in consensual non-consent or BDSM scenes, even meeting someone who wanted to arrange a meeting, and Daniel accompanied me to meet them. I arrived at a stranger's house wearing lingerie, but nothing physical occurred. I started driving around naked or pretending my car had broken down in somewhat secluded areas, hoping someone would take advantage of me. Eventually, I encountered my abusive ex, the one I had been having nightmares about. However, I did not flee in panic this time. Instead, I spoke to him and asked him to use me as he had before, while I struggled against him and insulted him throughout. I felt empowered to choose to endure abuse this time, believing it was the right decision to stop living in fear. I also connected with a small group of individuals with similar interests and even met some of them in a hotel room. Throughout this experience, I felt as though I was an observer watching someone else live my life on a large screen. After encountering my abusive ex, I returned to the doctor. Sharing my experience with my roommates made me realize that something was profoundly wrong. The doctor merely stated that mental medications take time and suggested increasing my dosage. I refused and left. Subsequently, I erupted and told Daniel that I needed to be apart from him. In my mind, I thought it would be a temporary break while I fixed everything, and I began seeing a counselor. She informed me that what I was experiencing was a manic episode, and finally granted me the permission I needed to discontinue the medication. I stopped immediately and ended up in the emergency room for withdrawal, receiving temporary anxiety medication. I gave Daniel a box of his belongings and his leather jacket, and I will never forget that he told me I should have sought a second opinion before taking the medication. I still cringe at this, but I even kissed his cheek out of habit when we said goodbye. My roommates and I moved out of the apartment, and I returned to live with my mother while socializing with my abusive ex, assuring him daily that Daniel was the only person I would ever love. When the haze from the medication finally began to lift, it felt like emerging from a nightmare in a burning house. I stopped spending time with the abusive ex, except for visiting his wife and her children, as she was my friend at the time. I met someone new, named Mike, and after a couple of months of living with my mother, I moved 2 hours away. I started a relationship with Mike and his partner, Dawn. The relationship went well until I became pregnant. Don could not handle the pressure of revealing our unconventional relationship to his family and left before the baby arrived. Mike visits occasionally, but it is primarily just me and my little one these days. Throughout my efforts to move on from my mistakes, I never, ever stopped thinking about Daniel. I dreamed about him for 3 consecutive years. Not a single day passed without thoughts of him. When the baby was born, I moved back in with my mother in her new home for support after an extremely traumatic cesarean section. I stayed there until the baby was about 4 months old and then moved back in with Mike. The lack of sleep and support affected me, so the baby started staying with my mother while I returned to work. This arrangement lasted about a year before we ultimately moved back in with my mother and the baby while Mike relocated elsewhere. This occurred right before 2020. I secured a work-from-home job. My mother fell seriously ill in 2021 and returned home in 2022 needing 24-hour care, forcing me to quit my job. It was a challenging time. The scarring from the cesarean made it difficult to stand for long periods, but we managed. I realized in early 2024 that I was finally experiencing days when I did not think about Daniel. My grandmother passed away, and my mother struggled to cope after yet another major surgery. Her health steadily declined, and she passed away just before the holidays. Once the arrangements were made and everything started settling into a new routine, it felt as if a dam burst. All my feelings for Daniel surged back, much stronger than before. I miss him deeply. This feeling intensified after I made a Facebook post expressing my emotions, and a mutual friend mentioned that he had asked about me. However, I do not want to reach out to him. I have mutually blocked him on my main social media accounts and deleted his number a long time ago to prevent any drunk texting incidents, and I have had no contact whatsoever. I do not wish to change this because, honestly, what would it achieve? I am under no illusions about what the future might hold. Simply missing him is not a valid reason to reach out, especially since my life has been a series of disasters. I now have a child. The person I once knew may no longer exist, and yet I cannot help but see messages from the universe literally everywhere. I do not believe I could engage in a romantic relationship again. I think I simply miss knowing him as a person. I miss him in a soul-crushing way. In summary, I ruined my relationship after a manic episode and still miss him after 10 years. Story 5. Choosing my father after years of estrangement. A struggle between loyalty and happiness. As I embrace my newfound relationship with him, can I prioritize my well-being without feeling guilty for letting go of my mother's expectations? Am I selfish for wanting more? I am a 17-year-old female, and the situation is as the title states. My parents had an arranged marriage that was tumultuous. They experienced a divorce that was even more chaotic, all before I was even aware of it. Throughout my life, it was suggested that I had to choose between them. Living with my mother, having no siblings and limited social skills, my decision was almost predetermined. My relationship with my father consisted of him visiting me weekly with McDonald's, which transitioned to bi-weekly visits along with an allowance when I started high school. I do not know how this arrangement came to be, but it had been established since I was under 6 years old. Growing up, I really loved my mother. She was my entire world. I would share details about my day with her every day when she walked me home from school. I confided all my secrets, including those of my friends. I made cards at home and at school for Mother's Day and her birthday that I presented to her, downplaying the effort I had put into them because I struggled to express emotions through words. I would later find those cards discarded in the trash, or she would return them to me, claiming she lacked the space to keep them. I rationalized every hurtful word and action she directed at me because she was my mother, and I knew she had a challenging past. No one is perfect, and mistakes are a part of life, especially for a single working mother. We moved away from everyone when I began 7th grade. The pandemic, coupled with the isolation of being with my mother and nothing more, greatly affected me. My solid B average plummeted to barely passing grades. I suffered anxiety attacks while walking because I did not know what to do with my arms. I consistently lied to my friends, fabricating stories about my life because I was ashamed to admit that I spent my days scrolling through TikTok. I made the mistake of asking my mother for advice once, and she told me to keep wearing a mask even after the mandatory usage of masks was lifted, which led to me becoming an outcast at my school. I had good friends sent by God Himself who kept me going. After the school year ended, my mother mocked someone who was still wearing a mask, and that was when my perception of her shifted. I never acknowledged my father. He would call before visiting on my mother's phone, and she would eavesdrop on every conversation. I learned to speak only minimally. Our discussions about him consisted of her recounting the horrors he inflicted upon her and the mistreatment I endured as an infant from him and his family. My father was essentially non-existent to me. I could only view him as the man who arrived every other week with an allowance. During my final year of high school, a year ago, I underwent a significant change. Everything hit me all at once, like being struck by a truck. I felt immense shame and could not look in the mirror without feeling nauseous. Family friends I had adored as a child wanted to see me after 5 years, and I avoided them at all costs because I was so embarrassed. My friends at school were the only reason I continued to get out of bed each morning, even though they had come to merely tolerate me, which only solidified my beliefs. My mother began noticing my behavior and interrogated me. Eventually, she gave up and resorted to insulting me, calling me weird and abnormal, and claiming I needed therapy, which I never accepted. I started college this year, and all my friends attended different institutions. I had some old friends, but in the short term, one of them chose someone else over me, which naturally hurt. I knew it was not worth hating her for, but this rejection stung because I found myself alone. My only goal became escaping the house with my mother. I became spiritual. I spoke to the universe daily and wrote everything down on paper as a way to alleviate the weight on my shoulders. I was greatly inspired by the wizard Liz and began asking the universe for favors, seeking to be directed onto the right path. I felt overwhelmed by the stagnation in my life and sensed I did not belong where I was. One day, while I was talking to the universe, I felt as though I was being directly guided. That night, I ended up running away after my mother erupted in anger when I gave my father my phone number. We had not had a physical fight since I was 13. She had stopped hitting me, realizing that I was provoking her to escalate the violence. I still do not fully comprehend it, but I found myself developing an affinity for our physical altercations. They offered a sense of catharsis. She had not physically harmed me in over 4 years. I tolerated it for a while, but eventually, I found myself crying out of fear. It was a strange feeling because I had not experienced fear since I was 10, when I still feared the dark. I fled and returned the following day against my will because, truthfully, where else was I to go? My father conveniently visited the next day, and it was the first time I saw my parents in the same room. She began belittling me in front of him while he wiped my tears. It was a traumatic experience because I barely knew the man, and there he was, trying to comfort me while I viewed him as an abusive stranger. 3 months have passed. Everything returned to normal after that night, with the only change being that my father now called me directly on my phone instead of through my mother. He began speaking to me with warmth, using words I had never heard before, which made me uncomfortable. Phrases like, "I pray for your success and well-being every day. You are fortunate and blessed because you were born on the 7th, just like me, which is the number associated with all good things in this world. The days of the week, the chakras in our bodies, the colors of the rainbow, and the 7 notes in music." He also mentioned multiple times that my mother initially wanted a boy and was disappointed at the prospect of having a girl. That comment was pivotal in my decision to see him as my parent because my mother had made similar remarks in the past, and I had recognized it during our verbal disagreements. It felt peculiar. I continued to ask the universe for guidance, developing a strong desire to spend a day with him. When my mother learned of this, she began arguing with me, insisting that I choose between her and him, claiming that she was cursed and that God was punishing her for transgressions from a past life. My decision is firm, and the idealized view of my mother as the best parent has crumbled. However, she does not have anyone else. She works hard and lacks many friends. I am uncertain about what to think. I do not want to hurt her, but do I not have the right to pursue my happiness at her expense? I also worry that I will be punished alongside her if I choose to prioritize my own desires. After all, she is my mother. Am I in the wrong for turning my back on the woman who gave birth to me and sacrificed her body and soul for me? Story 6. Dance classes reignited old memories, bringing both joy and anger. While I thrived in familiar routines, feelings of hurt surfaced from our past. I reflected on unmet needs and communication failures. Why walk away when there was so much we could have worked on? I still wish he would return. Do not misunderstand me. That feeling has not vanished yet, and I suspect it will linger for a while longer. I have resumed taking dance classes, and my initial lessons were quite challenging. I had not danced in a long time, and the emotions were still overwhelming. In fact, I went home and wept in my roommate's arms because I was suddenly flooded with memories of my favorite routine of chatting with you after class and eagerly anticipating our online time when I returned home. The drive was difficult and far from peaceful, as I had a comforting song blaring, and I was simply shouting into the car about how much I loved you and what an idiot you were for walking away. I attended another class just yesterday, and I felt incredibly good since the choreography was familiar. I smiled, felt proud of myself, and shared laughter with my friends. However, upon leaving, I felt a surge of anger. I was angry because I resented how you hurt me, made me feel unseen, invalidated, and frightened during our breakup. I was furious that you chose to give up. I am not going to plead with you to stay, so fine, I will leave. Especially since you would likely have that explosive reaction again, justifying it by saying you had no choice in order to be heard. You know, my counselor mentioned that this is often what individuals who perpetrate abuse in relationships say. If only she did not trigger me, then I would not have hit, screamed, thrown, etc. at her. However, I recognize that you are not abusive. I understand you are flawed and that this response is something you could improve if you acknowledge it. I wanted to do that alongside you. I wished to work on myself on us, but instead you gave up and walked away. Although I remember our good times, I now observe many more aspects of our relationship that were not as wonderful. There are things I hope a partner would do for me. The gradual descent into complacency feels deceiving, as I reflect on how I was charmed by you. It is not your responsibility to fix how I feel when I am in a particular mood, and please allow me to find ways to improve my own feelings. I will communicate with you when I am ready. But no, you take responsibility upon yourself, feel guilty, and grow frustrated with me when you are unable to resolve it immediately. What on earth? Do you not listen? I have told you that my love language is words of affirmation, yet I rarely receive any compliments from you. I cannot recall the last time you called me beautiful or cute. I do not remember you expressing your appreciation unless I ask or if I initiate it first by praising you with all my words. If you are proud of me or happy to be with me, I used to express those feelings all the time. I would send random, I love yous when I genuinely felt it. There were activities I suggested that you overlooked and forgot, and then you became upset when I tried to remind you, even angrier when I expressed sadness over your forgetfulness. I also noticed that you do not communicate the things that irritate you, letting them build up while blaming me for being the only one to express such feelings. I also confided in you my concern that you would address me in the same manner you speak to your parents. You gave me that "what the heck" expression, indicating that you would never do such a thing. Yet there you were, yelling at me, bombarding me with accusations and your endless "what about you?" arguments. We had previously agreed to disagree about the notion that reciprocating the same energy someone else gives you is a choice and can potentially be detrimental in a relationship, especially during an argument. Communication is crucial, but what is the point if you believe your partner is intentionally attacking you when that is far from the truth? I should have recognized the warning signs when I saw them. You are so infuriating. How did I endure all of that? And do you know what is even more frustrating? IT is all resolvable. These are issues we could address, matters we could openly discuss, airing our grievances, and plan how to tackle them together. At one point, I suggested that perhaps we should see a couples counselor to foster better understanding between us, but that idea was quickly dismissed. I acknowledge that I can be frustrating as well. I know that I do things that upset you. However, no one deserves to be treated the way you treat me during conflicts. There was a time when you brought out feelings in me that made me despise myself during an argument. This was due to the heightened intensity of the situation, which was unhealthy as I attempted to match your energy. I loathed it. I do not like becoming so angry that I utter words I later regret, and I am certain it causes you pain as well. Why would you want that kind of dynamic? Why are you comfortable with it? It is detrimental. How did it feel when I communicated that I felt hurt, attacked, and frustrated like you, but chose not to scream or escalate matters, resulting in tears instead? You probably viewed me as pathetic. So fine. Go and find someone else who can match your energy without feeling awful about themselves and the pain they cause you. Seek someone who argues in the same manner you do, and then witness how disrespectful, exhausting, and painful it can be. Because that is not what I desire.